Thank you for being here this morning. If you don't know who I am, shame on me. I'm Steve Board, the Director of Development here at this college, and I think I've met all of you and had some time with each of you, and it's been a lot of fun. Victoria, thanks for coming back. She's ready to speak again, I think. We have a bunch of things we want to do today. We'll try to get through this quickly and respect your time, but before we start, let's have a word of prayer. Father, we're thankful for the day. We love you. We thank you so much for your grace in our lives. Thank you for our salvation through the Lord Jesus Christ. Father, we thank you for this community and for the willingness they have of hearing what we're doing here at Maranatha, but also the support that they provide to the school and especially to these young people. So we're thankful for that, Lord. Thank you for placing our school here in this city. We just pray that as we talk about the things that are happening here, that it might be a blessing to these folks and that you might be glorified through it. Well, thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, I have a couple things for you very quickly. We have three folks that are going to speak this morning. And again, we're trying to condense it as best we can. We want to talk to you this morning about our online program, just to make you aware of that. We're going to talk about our 50th year celebration. For those of you who don't know, we began our 50th year here in Watertown, I suppose officially back in July, but our 50th school year starts 2 weeks from yesterday. So the athletes arrive today, the fall athletes arrive today, the freshmen arrive a week from Friday. All the teachers are on, the instructors are on campus, they're all panic-stricken. So if you see a lot of people with fearful looks, that's who they are. And we're trying to get ready. So we appreciate you being here with us this morning. One of the things that we will do the first week of school, which has become a tradition for us, is a job fair on August the 31st. So if you have a business in town or know of a business in town and you have need for a student to come and work for you, or hopefully multiple students to come and work for you, we'd love to talk to you about that. And there is a yellow sheet of paper on the table for you to fill out. So if there is that need in your business, if there are other needs that we can help you. One of the things I like to tell, that obviously is a recruiting video that we give to young people, we show to young people. And so it's specific for them, but that video was produced in large measure by our faculty and our students. So the video, voiceover, all of the people that were speaking other than Dr. Marriott was students. Well, and Mrs. Marriott, you're on there too. So the two Marriott spoke, but the rest of the presentation was done by our students. So that gives you an idea of the kind of work they can do. So if you need some help in that way, we'd love to do that. We'd love to share our young people with you in that way. So that's what that form is for. We also promote internships, obviously. David Wentold, one of the young men, talked about relationships with the faculty. We love it when they talk about the relationship with us. But we also encourage them to build up relationships in the business community while they're here, because we think that would be advantageous to them. So if you have a need that way, anything that we can do to support your business, we'd love to have that opportunity to talk to you about it. Also, we have some really interesting business breakfasts coming up this year. The one that everybody has asked about, they specifically asked me a question, the chamber did, about a specific type of conversation. We've titled it in January, Generations in the Workforce. For those of you who may not be aware, I was reminded this summer there's actually 4 generations now that are in the workforce. Good luck, right? And so we're going to talk about that in January with a young lady who is an expert in that field, has been studying it over the last 5 or 6 years, been making presentations across the country, and I think you'll really enjoy that. The other breakfast that we were asked to do was how to market your business, and Tim Morgan will be here in September to do that. And then Ben Waymeyer and some of his close friends will be here in October talking about economic development and county government. In November, we're going to talk about not only entrepreneurship, but what do you do with your business at the end? So from entrepreneurship to ESOPs, it's a fascinating conversation. And then in February, we'll have our economic breakfast in partnership with our friends at Partnership Bank. So if you have any interest in supporting and sponsoring those breakfasts, please see me, and we'll provide you that opportunity to do that as well. One last thing, and since he writes all my checks, I have to make sure I say this. Our Vice President of Business Affairs, Mark Stevens, actually teaches an HR class as well. And he would like to help your business with your employee manual. So be interesting to know how many of you have that. I won't embarrass you today. But he would love to help you. The students do that with his oversight, and they do it as a class project. So that's another thing that we could help you with. There's some marketing projects we could help you with, some accounting projects we could help you with, all kinds of things if you have that need. All right? So that's what's on your table. There is we talked last year about our music prep class. One of the ladies that was here actually came and took a class with one of her students. She said she really enjoyed it. So you adults can come and take piano lessons if you like, but it's really targeted towards the young folks, and that's one of the things that we do in the community. The bookmark is on the table for you to see there. A couple things for you. Go Serve Lead is the motto that we try to impress upon our students. We suggest to them that they need to go with purpose. If you remember Daniel, the book of Daniel talks about the fact that he purposed in his heart. And so we try to challenge our young people that they should have a purpose as they go out into the workforce. And we try to train them accordingly. We ask them to serve with compassion. Our Lord was very compassionate in his ministry to people, and we challenge them to be compassionate as they serve. And then we tell them to lead with integrity. We think that's very important. One of the wonderful lessons, one of the books that I share with our students is there is no such thing as business ethics. Folks, your ethics are your ethics. And your life should be the same whether you're at home, at business, at church, or wherever you might be. And so we try to challenge them as they go out with purpose and they serve with compassion, that they'll also lead with integrity. One of the things we're doing this fall that Jim won't talk about in our 50th celebration is a Go Serve Lead medical missions conference we're doing. If you're in that field, or if you have any interest in medical missions, this is going to be a fun program. It's a challenging program targeted to teenagers specifically, but we have several adults that have signed up. There's a $50 cost for you, which will include your meals, but it starts Thursday evening, all day Friday, Saturday morning, focused on missions and how we can take medical missions out into the world. Our nursing students, as part of their clinicals, go on an international medical missions trip in the fall. And this year I think we're scheduled to go to Uganda in October, which will be an exciting time for those students. But that is one of their requirements as part of their training here in the nursing field. So we'd encourage you, if you're interested about it, we have some information on the table as you leave. We'd love to talk to you about that as an event that you can participate in here on campus if you'd like. One of the other things we've done, and I don't think the folks from Archie Monument came today. I don't think there's anybody here. And then we also had Tim Theater's company do the landscaping for us, but we just built this alumni plaza on the west side of Old Main. And we've asked if there's businesses that would like to buy one of the stones. These are granite stones, and we built it as a celebration of our 50th year and a way for us to recognize our alumni and those who have supported the university over the 50 years that we've been here in Watertown. If you're interested in that, let me know if you'd like to go look at it. These guys did a great job. The guys down at Archie Monuments have engraved these granite stones for us. And when the theater people came and did it, they're used to doing brick pavers. And as I said, this is granite. We hope it might be permanent. That's our target, and our desire is for it to grow. One last little tidbit for you. We've had about 5,100 graduates in the 49 graduations that we've celebrated here at Maranatha. And this gives you a breakdown of the 5 colleges that we have here, 5 schools. And then we also share with you our online department with Philip, which Philip will talk about a little bit more in just a second. But that gives you an understanding. We started obviously as a Bible college, so you're probably not surprised that 37% of our graduates have come through our School of Bible. But I'd also note that 32% of our graduates have come from teacher education. And one of the things we're very proud of is that our teacher education is ranked very high with all the schools in the state of Wisconsin that do teacher education. I think there's 28 in the state, and we rank in the top 1, 2, or 3 in every one of the areas that we compete against. And then obviously 12% of our graduates are in applied science, and another 12% in my favorite college, the business school, which should be in green, but it's not. I always think the business guys, they're the guys out making money, right? And then the other thing that we really like is our nursing school, and 4% of our graduates have graduated from the School of Nursing. So we have 3 presentations today. Philip Olt is our director of our online and distance learning department. He's going to talk about that. Jim Brogler is one of our teachers in our academy. He's also a supervisor for Jefferson County, and he's going to talk about our 50th year celebration and some of the events that are coming up with that. And then Dr. Marriott is going to come, and he's going to share with you some of the history of Maranatha for those of you who may not be aware of how we started here, and then some of the things that we're doing in the coming years. So Philip, if you'll come, push the right button.
Good morning. Thank you, Steve. I am the Director of Online and Distance Learning here at Maranatha, and really one of the great privileges in my life is being able to work with adult students. We do have a variety of students in our programs, but it's really exciting for me to be able to connect with students all over the country and the world, and here in Watertown, who are doing our online degree programs. It's really neat to work with that demographic compared to the 17 to 18 to 19-year-olds that we get here on campus as freshmen. But what I really love to see is that 50-year-old person who's coming back and says, I started my degree program and I really want to finish it. I've never finished it, and it's important to me. Or the person who's maybe kind of hit a career plateau and wants to take the next step, whether that's through finishing their undergraduate degree in business maybe, or doing their master's degree with us. And so it's a privilege to work with those folks. As I think of programs that might help meet your needs or those of your employees, we have open enrollment programs online, so that means really anyone is welcome to enroll in them. For you, your employees, these would be, I think, good things to help connect with you and our community. Our Master of Organizational Leadership is a relatively new program. It's not exactly an MBA, but it is a business field program focused on a broad swath of things focused around leading an organization. Includes basic budgetary and financial management classes, human resources, kind of brings all of that together in organizational leadership program. A bachelor's degree in business, which is again also a flexible program, accommodates a ton of transfer. We love students with transfer credits. You can transfer in basically 3 of 4 years into that degree program. And so we love to work with students in that, and then even at the lowest levels, associate's degrees in business and digital media. And we do have programs in other fields as well, in education and such. But we would love to work with you or your students if you find yourself thinking, I really wish I could, maybe we have a program that can help meet your needs. My cards are on the table in the hallway, or you're more than welcome to talk to me about it. I would love to meet with you and just talk with you a little bit about what our online programs can do for you and your students in terms of helping them or you take that next step and learn a little bit more, enrich yourself, continue to improve. And we do have a lot of students, even here in Watertown, community people taking our online degrees, and it's also kind of neat to run into those people, come in and visit the office. Sometimes I find myself feeling a little sequestered away from flesh and blood people working with distance students, right? So I talk with hundreds of students, but yet I only see very, very few of them. So it's nice when someone from the community walks in and says, hey, I'm one of your students in an online program. Can I talk with you about something? And that's just really a joy in life to be able to work with the people in the community. So I'm going to turn it over here in just a second here to Jim Brogler. He's going to talk to you about our 50th year celebration.
Good morning. You did mention the fact that I do teach full-time in the academy here. I am also privileged to represent Watertown on the Jefferson County Board, but this morning I'm here with a different hat. I wear multiple hats, some of you know that. That is an alumni of the school. When I looked at that circle earlier, I actually fell into two colors, so I guess I can't decide, both in the Bible and education. I do have 2 degrees from here, but it's been my privilege to be a part of the committee which has been working on the 50th. In 1968, Dr. and Mrs. B. Myron Cedar Home came to Watertown and started then Maranatha Baptist Bible College, now we know as Maranatha Baptist University. And from that very first year, we had everything you could ever want in a college. And so as we look at this next year, we're hoping that we'll give you an idea of some of the elements that we're going to have. First is our alumni weekend, and you're thinking, that doesn't apply to me, but actually it does. Many of those people coming back were your neighbors. Maybe they worked for you. Maybe their children work for you now. But a wonderful opportunity to come back and renew some fellowship along the way. We have 5 to 6. We'll be having a hour of reunion, I guess you might say. Actually, it's a lot of inside jokes because all the summer teams are coming back. We've had hundreds of summer teams go out to represent the school. They're coming back, they're going to try and revive one of their old songs and have an opportunity to present that. So it'll be up in Burkhardt Hall, then a banquet and the presentation here. As we go along, the biggest event of the year will be the Fall Festival. That will encounter all of the 50 years of the school in the different decades, showing you where we are serving, where we have been training, where we've been going, what we have done in the past. Be a wonderful evening here presenting in the gymnasium 2 different nights. You'd be more than welcome to come. From the very beginning, if you knew Mrs. Cedarholm, you knew that drama and music were very important. And from the very first year, we have done productions in various stages throughout the campus. The very first year I was doing a little bit of study, we did 3 Shakespearean plays the very first year as a brand new school. So this year, we're trying to encapsulate all of the history of the school by each event, and we'll be doing Much Ado About Nothing. You're thinking, oh, it's Shakespeare. I struggled through that in high school. I never understood what was going on. But Much Ado is one of those comedies. And if you're familiar with Gilbert and Sullivan, it's similar vein, where there's a lot of confusion and misunderstandings. It'd be a wonderful opportunity, a very enjoyable evening if you come out and join us. From the very beginning, as I mentioned, music's important. Handel's Messiah is one of the greatest pieces ever written in the history of music. And we've had the privilege to do that scores of times. This year, we're doing our best to invite back alumni as well, many of whom have graduated from Maranatha, gone out, got advanced degrees, are now off training, singing, performing. We're hoping to invite them back to be some of our soloists, to sing and play in the orchestra as well. That event will be held at Calvary Baptist Church here in Watertown on the west side of town because of the wonderful facilities we have there for performance, especially when you're dealing with a 60, 70-piece orchestra. We should have between 150 and 200 members singing in the Messiah. That's just one of those pieces. It's just so perfect for Christmas. And so we'd love to have you come to that event as well. One of my favorites is the cycle in our drama department where to try to do musicals. And we're doing one of the best in the spring, and that is The Music Man. And it's kind of got its Midwest roots. I realize we're not from Iowa, but we're pretty close to Iowa. But it'll be a wonderful opportunity to come out, to enjoy, to have a good time, to laugh. Probably not aloud, but maybe in your head sing along with some of those songs, because certain ones of those just pop into our head and we're going along with that. So you'd be always encouraged to come to that. And then the last event, appropriately so, is the commencement. The fact that we're having our 50th graduation. As mentioned, we have over 5,000 graduates serving all over the world in all sorts of ministries. And this is an opportunity once again to maybe renew some friendships, to have the opportunity to see what's happened throughout the entire year, you all been to a graduation. It's a special event in the lives of not just the student graduating, but the parents and now the grandparents coming back. And some of those grandparents are graduates of our school now. So we're thankful for all the years the Lord has given us. The 50th is just another milestone in the many events here at Maranatha. We'd love to have you come to any and all of these events. Please don't hesitate to contact us. We thank you for your part in Watertown. Of those 5,000 graduates, I wonder how many of those worked their way through school at some of your businesses and hopefully left a good testimony. We'd like to continue that by your part and thank you by inviting you to these events. Thank you, Dr. Marion.
Wow, that sounds exciting. Excuse my voice. I think I might even come. All right, good. Learning a lot of things that are going to be happening. We have a number of people working on the events for this 50th year, and it's coming together nicely. And I know that there'll be a number of people coming to town for the events from time to time, more visitors in the community, and I know that's always good for those of you that are in business, okay, to see them here. I'd like to talk to you about how Maranatha began. And it's called the Miracle of Maranatha, is what I'm going to share with you. Dr. Cedarholm, our founder, shared this hundreds of times. And you've heard it how many times? I mean, numbers of us have heard it over and over again, and there are parts of it that we practically have memorized. But I have to condense it, because Dr. Cedarholm would take about an hour or more to tell it sometimes, and you wouldn't stay here that long, and I wouldn't want to tell it that long. So we're going to greatly condense some of the events that took place. Maranatha Baptist Bible College was called and is called the Miracle School. And certainly it was a modern day miracle, not a biblical miracle, then God suspended time or, did something very, very unusual like that. But we call it a providential miracle, in that he brought events to play and people together in such an unusual way to allow this school to begin very, very quickly. It was in May of 1968 when Mrs. Elaine Sen, a local resident here, made a telephone call to Dr. and Mrs. Cedarholm to tell them about Sacred Heart Military Academy being for sale. This very property, this 62 acres, it had been for sale since November of the previous year, and no bites, no takers on it. The academy that was here had merged with another institution and no longer needed the facility. Now they wanted it to remain for educational use, so keep that in mind. That's exactly why the door remained open for the Cedarholms for so long. The school was 70 years old. Old Main, we call it over there. We're going to see in just a few moments. 70 years old at the time that Cedarholms were introduced to the property. Beautifully landscaped, 62 acres, ready for educational use in every way. Mrs. Sen had a student at Pillsbury Baptist Bible College where Dr. and Mrs. Cedarholm had been previously. And so she knew the Cedarholms, and she knew that he was no longer president there, and so gave him the telephone call and said, "You must come to Watertown, buy this property, and start a Bible college." Can you imagine getting a telephone call like that? He said, Dr. Cedarholm said, "I asked a few questions, and when I asked the price, I heard $225,000. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot of money, but he said this. He said, "Did you ever know a Baptist preacher that had $225,000? And that's how he would have said it. And so he dismissed the whole thing. So that's impossible. It's not going to happen. However, he got a telephone call, and he was asked to preach in South Bend, Indiana. Now, he was in Minnesota. And so he was going to have to travel right across Interstate 94 and come close to Watertown. So he and Thelma said, well, we might as well, it's 8 miles. We might as well just drive off and take a look at the property and see what is there. And so, first sight of the campus, they were, according to their testimony, unusually moved And they felt that God may be doing something. They looked at the campus and they said, this is exactly what we need. Dormitory space was there. Now, in the early days, dormitory space was all in Old Main. And over the years, it's been in various parts of the building. When I got here in 1974, the third floor had women there. It's called cloister. I don't know why they called it that, but anyway, they were cloistered away, I guess. And then the second floor had men residents. But during that time, they had men on the first floor. They had on the second floor. They were scattered around the building. But there was adequate space. They had a large chapel that had been refurbished in 1961. In 1961, they spent $71,000 just to refurbish what is now Burkhart Hall. They had an auditorium. In my day, it was called 306, third floor. It's called Fine Arts Hall now, but a little auditorium. We use it for academy plays and other minor productions. It's still in use there. They had a gym, a student center. Well, if you take a look at the picture, I brought this old school thing here, and this is where we saw the plaza a little bit earlier. This is Burkhart Hall up here, been refurbished, where we have our musical performances. And then over here, you can't see the other side of it, but that's where the gym was. And the gym, when I came here in 1974, was still used as a gym. And in fact, I bounced a few basketballs in there and made a few shots. That was unusual for me. Anyway, it was still there. Now it's a student center. There's a second floor that's been put in there. It's the post office, it's the bookstore, a number of other things. The dining hall is now our Old Main Cafe. The post office in that day is now our IT department. It's been remodeled for that purpose. The recreational room that they had, the basement of Old Main, is now completely used by our academy, and it's been petitioned off into classrooms, and so it's in great use there. And then we had an infirmary. Now it's our piano pedagogy area. A number of pianos, the community comes in to that area. Well, the reception room was what we called the dating parlor. That's where couples would go and sit down, and we had, back in those days, what was called the 6-inch rule that nobody followed. And you would go in there and spend some time, like I did, with my wife-to-be. The old dating parlor is now the financial aid office, and on the other side, it is the conference room. Included in the property was a large garage. The development and alumni services building is there now. That garage has been long gone. Was a maintenance shop. The library now stands in the place where the maintenance shop was, and the storage building. If it were still here, you would be in it right now, okay? And so that's been gone, and the building that we're in now has been erected. And so that's what the property offered, and they saw that and they said, perfect. We couldn't ask for anything more, to get a college started. But all financial matters concerning the price and the sale of the property were all handled by the Brothers of the Holy Cross down in South Bend, Indiana, in the office of the Provincial General. And so guess where they were going that particular Sunday? They were on their way to Indiana. And so they said, we might as well swing by and just chat with the Provincial General and see what the possibilities might be. Well, when you start a college, you need some things. Dr. Monroe Parker was a friend of the Cedar Homes, and he had been a college president and well known in the United States in our circle of Baptists. And he said, Dr. Cedarholm, 4 things you need when you're starting a college. You need a following, and Cedarholm was well known across America. He had been the general director of a large Baptist association with thousands of churches. And so he had been right there and mingling with the very constituents that would be sending students to Maranatha. You need a faculty, had no faculty. You need a facility, we have none, but this could be it. And you need finances, and he had no money. Later on, our chairman of the board, our current chairman of the board, Dr. Doug Jackson, said, you also need freshmen, all right? And he was going to be one in a short while as we tell our story. So the meeting in South Bend was positive, and the Cedar Homes were to raise between $5,000 and $10,000 as a down payment, and the Brothers of the Holy Cross would finance the rest of the balance at 5% for 10 years. Pretty good for not having any money, but they didn't have the 5 or 10 either. The Brothers of the Notre Dame had spent $250,000 in recent years in refurbishing buildings, landscape, remodeling, and on the north side of the building there is a 3-story, actually the basement, 4-story staircase that they built at much expense, which is still very useful today. And so that was all done in recent years, and the staircase itself being done and completed in 1968. Familiar time. So returning to Watertown on May 14th, an appointment was made with one of the banks to see the possibility of securing a loan. And so that appointment was to take place in 6 days on May the 20th. Cedar Homes came back and met with the bank, and when they found out, the bankers found out that we were not part, the Cedar Homes were not part of any denomination and simply independent Baptists, they graciously, I guess, dismissed the meeting and had no interest of making a loan. Yet, the very next day, Cedar Homes had already driven back to Minnesota. On May the 21st, they received a telephone call from the man in charge of loans at the bank, Mr. Gordon Wagner. And he informed them that they were being granted a $70,000 loan to be used for the down payment. Now, this was an answer to prayer. And he said that the president, Mr. Gerald Flynn, called an early morning board meeting. He had thought about it through the night and got the board back together, and they decided that they would be a part of this venture by granting this loan. Dr. Cedarholm contacted the provincial general with the good news. But he was not prepared for what he was going to hear. The man was happy, but he offered something much better. He said that the brothers also had another meeting. And in that meeting, they said, because you Baptists don't have any money, we're not going to require a down payment at all. And in fact, we're going to lower the price from $225,000 to $150,000. And we're not going to charge you any interest for a whole year. We're not going to tack it on. We're just not going to charge interest for a whole year from the time of your first occupancy for 365 days. That's pretty good news, right? And so Doc called the bank to cancel the loan, and the president said, I can't understand this. I've done business with these people for 20 years, and I know that they are shrewd bargainers. Now, I stop here. I don't want to be offensive to anybody. We're all friends here. And these are the words that came from the banker, all right? He said, what mystifies me is the Roman Catholics would do this for Baptists, all right? And that was before the ecumenical movement had really gotten a strong hold, of course, nationally. And anyway, that was a very unusual event. So what about closing costs? What about realtor fees? Donations covered everything. And 2 large gifts came in actually the day before occupancy for $4,500, which completed the payments to realtor and all other costs. Now, there are only 60 days before the opening of school. We've got the facility, but what else do we have? We have no faculty. We have no students. We really have no furnishings. We really have nothing. That's what the Cedar Homes were facing. There was no advertising, and yet there were 57 different teachers that applied to teach for this new college. Only by word of mouth would they have known that. Among them was Dr. Ed Burkhart and his wife Dorothy. Dr. Burkhart, we name it Burkhart Hall for a reason. Dr. Burkhart was a child prodigy and a world-class violinist at the top, believe me, he was. And God called him at a young age, very young age, teenager, and then on into his 20s when he's at the top of the violin world, can I say that, the music world, called him to preach. And he diverted from that calling of music, and he diverted to studying music. And that from that time, he became a church planter, we call it. He started Baptist churches, and then he became a pastor. He's currently now pastoring in Flint, Michigan, Maranatha Baptist Church there. Unusual, no connection with the names, but that's the name of the church that he was in. And he was one of the ones that applied, and he and his wife Dorothy came to Watertown and wrote back a few days later, and this is what he said, quote, "Dr. Cedarholm, we feel strangely moved to come join you in this venture of faith." And so among the faculty members, that the 27 that were chosen, he and his wife were among them, and they were among a sacrificial group, a sacrificial cohort of choice servants of God that came here to be part of something with no possible vision of what could happen, or how they would be supported, or would there be paychecks or whatever. And frankly, I know faculty members that came here and literally dipped into their savings in order to be a part of this venture of faith. A total of 211 students stepped out in faith as well. And they stepped out not knowing if there'd be enough courses, if the school would be able to continue on to complete their education, or what would happen, but they trusted God in that venture. And all classifications of students were represented at that time. 81 freshmen, 44 sophomores, 53 juniors, and even 25 seniors came, and 13 of them graduating that very year. Dr. Cedarholm often told the story of moving into his office and sitting on an old orange crate. You see, all the furniture was gone. And you can picture it. He had his elbows on his knees, he said, and his hands on his face. And he looked around at the empty building thinking, "Lord, what have I done?" All right? He's got this building. He's got this responsibility. He's hired a faculty. There are no students at this point, and no vision of what could happen 50 years down the road for sure. But shortly after moving in, they received a call from South Bend. And the brothers got to thinking and maybe feeling a little bit guilty that they had cleaned out the buildings, and then came to a realization that they really didn't need the things that they had taken down to South Bend. They had no use for the furnishings, and they said, "Could you use some desks and chairs?" And of course, and what they did, they put them all back in the trucks and brought them on back at their own expense, and repopulated the building with furniture. And so then things began to happen. A manufacturer of fiberglass chairs gave 200 new chairs that would be shortly discontinued from his line. An owner of a fast food chain in Minnesota called to offer 200 sets of dishes. It seems that he had mistakenly ordered 200 too many. Said, "Could you use them?" Of course, they could use them. One day a truck pulled up and began to unload lawnmowers. And they weren't ordered. And so someone met the truck and said, "What are you doing? We didn't order these lawnmowers." He said, "Oh, I know that, but my boss said there was a new college starting here in Watertown, and looking at what around here, you're going to need some lawnmowers." And so they were donated, and with all the grass, they had 4-foot blades, Dr. Cedarholm said. Can you imagine that? One elderly lady gave her wedding silver for the president's dining room, and one of the parents of an entering student loaned the piano for the chapel. The faculty members agreed to loan their books for the library. And then there were pastors and evangelists and publishing houses and other educational institutions that loaned books and gave and donated books to Maranatha. So many books that the library was filled to overflowing. They had to have a sale to sell off about 2,000 books and help the college along in those days financially. In fact, just this week I talked to an elderly pastor. He's still going strong in San Francisco. And I knew that his institution, he had a seminary out there, had given books to Maranatha in those days. And I mentioned that to him. We're in our 50th year, and I still remember what you guys did for us way back then. He said, "Oh, we didn't give you those books. We sold those books to you." I said, "Whoa, you did? I bet you feel bad about that now, don't you? You got to send us some money." And he said, "No, I don't feel bad at all. We sold them cheap," he said. And so anyway, I tried to get a little, where's our development guy? I tried to get some money, but it didn't work, okay? One of Doc's favorite stories, and I close with this, was about the farmer delivering a truckload of carrots. he evidently had tried to take them to market, or he had too many, the price was down. I don't know what the circumstances were, or God just got a hold of his heart and said, I'd like to do something for the new college. But he pulled up and offered the carrots, and Dr. Cederholm said, well, the price was right, being free. He said it was a provision of the Lord, and that's how he would talk, a provision of the Lord. And he said, and so after that, it was sliced carrots, diced carrots, quarter carrot, cube carrots, carrot pie, carrot cake, carrot soup, okay? And that's what it was. In those days, whatever was donated, we ate, okay? And believe me, it wasn't a lot different in 1974 when I became a student here. The miracle hasn't ended. Providential miracles have been the testimony of Maranatha. There have been times when we've said, God, you're going to have to do something, and he has done it. And sometimes he's done it before we knew we needed it. I want to tell one final story about how he's done that, because it goes with what we just heard about our online education. We have about as many students these days externally from Maranatha as we do on campus. And that's made possible by a provision of the Lord back in 2010. Coming to campus as a new president in 2010, I came January 1 after being named in the previous September. I had a desire to see our online and distance education grow. And I found out quickly that that was going to be impossible. And I was very dismayed, in fact, very discouraged about what I was hearing. I was wanting to see it grow, develop, and the number of degrees that I thought we should be offering. And so we got everybody in the same room, that old dating parlor conference room now, and the heads of all the departments, including online, including IT, including business, and everybody was there. Anybody who has a part in enrolling a student, they were all in there and represented. And I went around the room and asked what would it take to double what we were doing in our online. And understand that was our first year. We had just some hands full of students is all we had, part-time, a class here and a class there. So what would it take to double what we were doing right now? And every department head, without exception, said it would be impossible. And that is this. I can explain it this way. In the early days of enrollment, maybe you enrolled in a college program the same way. You would have to go from classroom or from place to place, station to station, in order to enroll. The registrar, you'd have to be there. You'd have to go to the financial office, financial aid office. You'd have to go from place to place and check the boxes. And finally, at the end of the day, and waiting in lines, you maybe were ready to go for classes the next day if there were no hiccups. You know what we were doing for enrolling online people? Well, basically the same thing. I mean, you'd have to go from office to office. Somebody would for them, basically, to check the boxes and get them enrolled, because we didn't have a student information system. We didn't have an integrated system on campus where our offices could talk to each other. So, what are we going to do? Dr. Stevens is sitting here, and he knows he began investigating. He began talking to different vendors, and the exorbitant cost of being able to do that, retailing over $1 million to bring that kind of a system to Maranatha. Dr. Stevens is a very good negotiator, but he's not this good. I'm going to tell you, you're not this good. He got to a point where they had reduced their price on the one that we favored, the system, reduced it, most favorable terms you could ever ask for, and we still could not see budget-wise how we could do that. It was going to take really a year of implementation of the new system. We'd have to maintain the antiquated system that we were paying for, and all those things were against us. And I remember turning to him and I said, well, you just tell him that you got a new president, and he says that we can't pay anything for a year. Remember that Cederholm story? No interest for a year, no payments or interest for a year. I said, we can't do it for a year. And I remember his words back to me, they will not go for that. And he's the one who's been dealing with them. I know he felt a little bit like, how can I go back and ask that again? But he did. Came back to the next meeting and he said, they said okay. And so I call that, frankly, in my mind, in my world, the second Maranatha miracle, because it was that particular interaction, it was that negotiation that allowed us to do what we are doing today. Otherwise, we would not be standing up here saying, you can take online classes from us. We wouldn't be enrolling students from time to time, around the world. Last D-Men class that I went into, we had students from Thailand in there. We had students from Tennessee. We had students from the West. We had students from the East. We have students from all over the world. There have been times, Philip, when you know this better than I do, when we would have military students, off serving the Lord, flying sorties, in Afghanistan or Iraq back in that time especially. And they would be kind of off the radar for a few days. Next thing you're back. And that's because they were able to take our classes from Watertown, Wisconsin, from here in Watertown. They're able to take them anywhere in the world. And that's not an unusual situation for us today. God has opened the door for that. And God's done some great things in what we know as our small community here in Wisconsin. And I want you to know that. You're part of something much bigger here in Watertown than maybe that you realize. And we're so thankful for what God has given us here. God's chosen to put us here. And we're thankful for the relationship that we have with the community. Now, what I didn't do was show you the rest of the slides. Mayor, do you recognize that guy in the middle?
I do.
What is his name?
Mike Benson.
Mike Benson. He was the mayor back in those days. And that's Dr. Cedarholm and the business manager, Ed Coghill, standing there together in those days. That's the Maranatha Baptist Bible College. That's our first sign. When the gymnasium was going to be built, that was the groundbreaking. The groundbreaking actually took place a year and a half before they broke the ground. And that's Old Main, how it looked back then. And of course, that's how it looks today. The landscaping is different. The building is largely unchanged. That's what we looked like back in the early days. That's a 1976, I believe it says on there. Maybe you can read better than I. 78 picture. And what's most notable, I think, is what we have added down through here. You can see that the place where we are right now, that's the gym. Auditorium gym. Here's where we are. The library would be over here. Those things are not added yet. Dormitories. Cedarholm's house. Our science hall would be here. Number of things. My house is not there yet. I live over here in this little corner in the president's house. So you can see a lot of different changes that have taken place. There's a lot of buildings that have been added since that particular time. This is what we look like today. Okay? 2017 aerial view. I want to remind you that we like to bring the best of speakers that we can attract to campus. This is representation. Of course, that's Rebecca Clayfish, and that's our governor. We enjoyed having him on campus 2015. And we'd love to sponsor this golf outing. The community has been very good to support us and to be a part of that, our annual classic. And then we do appreciate how Watertown has gotten behind us in this 50th year to help us. There's a check that was given us to help us with our advertising and getting people here to Watertown during this year. Our Kitty campus is open to the community. I think you know that. It's been well utilized by folks here in Watertown. We're a 5-star rated facility, and we give, I would think, quality, but it's a caring atmosphere. We care for the students there. And then we don't run from the police generally, but we run for them, and that's one of the things represents what we like to do and get our students involved in the community. So we're happy to be here. We're glad to be here. We're glad God led us here. We're glad to be a part of what God's doing in this place. And Steve, you come on back, and we'll let you conclude it. Thank you for your time today.